In this video, I am going to show you how to make a graph with two y-axes. Now, I am going to assume that you have already entered your data into an Excel spreadsheet. Right? I have all of my data entered onto this one sheet. Likely, you have used the template up on Moodle and entered in your data into these columns. Right? Date, the structure examined, bud or the leaf, type of the measurement taken, as well as all the different replicates you used to get an average, which will then calculate your standard error of your mean, which you will also need in order to graph. Right? Now I'm going to assume that you've done all of this at this point and are now ready to graph. So I have my data up here, all right, and all my data is ready to go and prepared. We have provided you this data sheet for graphing here, and this sheet takes a while for my computer to load, but there'll be some shapes popping up here with instructions on how to make the graph. Right? So if you decide to use this data sheet here, you can populate your data in the appropriate columns and follow the instructions in the blue boxes that will appear to the right. All right, I'm going to use this spreadsheet here because it has a lot of data that I don't have to necessarily copy and paste over. So I want to make a graph that shows the average length in centimeters of my bud or my leaf, right? Because in this mock data set, I measured my buds until the leaves emerged, and then I continued on and measured leaf length. All right. So I'm going to make a graph with the date, the average length, right? And I'm going to do this first before I add in any more data onto my graph. So I'm going to highlight the data that I want to graph. I'm going to go up to the top and click Insert. And I'm going to choose a scatter plot connected with these rigid lines. And I have my chart started. Right? Now I'm immediately going to delete this chart title. We don't need that in our biological figures. All right, so I have one data line here, all right, and I have one y-axis. I'm going to go ahead and label this y-axis so I don't forget, right, what data set it'll correlate to when I add more data to this plot. So to do so, right, I'm on this Chart Design tab. I'm going to click this Add Chart Element button. I'm going to go down to these axes titles, and I'm going to put in a primary vertical axis and change that to what I wanted to say. So I'm going to go average length, and I'm going to make sure to include my units of centimeters. All right. Now I want to add in another data set. All right, and I have taken a lot of measurements here. I am going to add in my temperature data. All right. Now, I took my temperature data in Fahrenheit. I have since converted it to Celsius, and I want to graph the Celsius temperature data. So what I'm going to do on this graph that I made, I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to select this highlighted piece here that says Select Data. All right. Some sort of pop-up will occur. It might look a little different than the pop-up that I have, depending on your version of Excel. All right, so right now it says I have Series 1 in there. All right, Series 1, that is my average length data that I already graphed. I want to add another series. I'm going to click this plus button, all right, and it's going to prompt me to add in my values for this series 2. All right. Now my x values, that's my horizontal axis values, are going to stay the same. So I'm going to highlight the same date data. My y values, all right, I like to delete what's already in there. It might automatically delete for you, but if it doesn't, it tends to cause problems. So I delete that out. My y values, like I said, I want to graph temperature. So I'm going to grab all my temperature data, highlight it, right, and click OK. All right, so now I have two data sets on this graph, all right, but they're all trying to be graphed to this first axis, which is why things look a little strange here. So an easy way to make this look correct, all right, is to add in that secondary y-axis. I'm going to do that by clicking on the line for my temperature data, right-clicking, and format the data series. Right? The sidebar is going to pop up, and I'm going to click secondary axis. Right? And as you have seen here, it's going to automatically scale my temperature data to this new y-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and label that y-axis. All right, so axis title, that's my secondary vertical axis. And I am going to label it temperature in Celsius. All right. So now I have my two y-axis labels here. There's a few more things we need to do. All right. First of all, I like to delete the grid lines, right, to make this graph look very clean, and so I'm only looking at my data. Right. Now for my average length data, right, because I took 3 different replicates, I have standard error of the means. So I need to add in my error bars. So I'm going to click on this series data. I'm going to go up to this add chart element and click error bars. And now I'm going to click standard error, and Excel is going to automatically put error bars on there, but those are not the error bars that I want. All right. First of all, it gives these horizontal error bars. Yours may or may not do this, but if it adds these horizontal error bars, I'm going to click on the horizontal error bars and simply press delete on my keyboard. Right? Now my vertical error bars, I want to customize them to the values that I calculated. So I'm going to click on those error bars. All right, notice I'm clicking the error bars, not the dot itself. All right, that's my data point. I'm clicking on the error bars. All right. Once this pops up, right, this sidebar here, you want to make sure you're in this tab with this little mini bar graph. All right. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and select custom, and I want to specify my values. Now this pop-up box will occur. Again, I'm going to delete what's already in there. I'm going to choose my standard error. All right. And you know what? I just realized my standard error is incorrect. It's actually a duplicate of my average length. So let's correct that before we modify our standard error. All right, so I'm going to go and change that around real quick here.